Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining. I know people are joining on, and we welcome you to our resilience time. I am Regina Clay, and I'm going to be your producer this morning, technician this morning. And so I just want to give you a few technical tips as we begin this webinar. This is a webinar, so you may have been used to seeing yourself on camera. But this time you will not see yourself on camera. You will see the panelists, the wonderful panelists that we have before you. So we invite you to know that we see you as well, but you can't necessarily see yourself. So at this time, if you have any questions or anything, you can put those in the Q&A or in the chat. The chat, we will have some questions for you. Please answer those questions in the chat. If you have some questions for our panelists during their presentation, please put those in the Q&A. We invite you to put those in the Q&A. They are both available to you. We are excited to have you here, and we will begin shortly.
Good morning, resilient women. God bless you on this liquid sunshine Saturday morning. I am Dr. Yvette Rooks, the program chair for this resilient program, Weathering Life's Storms, a Black Women's Survival Kit. I'm also a member of the Columbia, Maryland chapter of the Lynx Incorporated. I have the pleasure to introduce to you two exceptional women. First, our program moderator, the Reverend Siobhan Airline Bradley, who is the president and founding principal of REACH, Beyond Solutions LLC, a faith advocacy, executive leadership, and public health firm. In her career, she has served as senior advisor to many of the U.S. Surgeon Generals and as the executive VP and senior director of the health within the NAACP. Lastly, Siobhan is the Eastern area of the Lynx Incorporated Health and Human Service Chair. Next, I have the honor of introducing the president of the Columbia, Maryland chapter of the Lynx Incorporated, Dr. Judy Grant. Dr. Judy Grant is a practicing diagnostic radiologist. She and her husband reside here in Columbia, Maryland. She is a true leader and has inspired our chapter with her dedication, inspiration, and resiliency. Ladies, I'm introducing to all of you our chapter president, Dr. Judy Grant.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our Resilience webinar. On behalf of the Columbia, Maryland chapter of the Lynx Incorporated, we have an enlightening program for you today to help you deal with some of the challenges that Black women face in our daily lives. I would like to thank our program chair, Dr. Yvette Rooks, and the entire Resilience Committee, including technology, and Laura Crandon, chair of the Chapter Health and Human Services Facet, and your Facet members. I would like to thank the Lynx Eastern Area Health and Human Services Facet chair, as you have heard our moderator, Siobhan Arline Bradley. I would like to send a welcome out to the Lynx Eastern Area Nominating Chair, who is here with us today, Cheryl Burke. Thank you so much for joining us. The Lynx Eastern Area Vice Director, Dr. Lisa Lowry Lomas, is here today and will be one of the panelists who has expertise in mental health. And now I am honored and excited to announce that the national president of the Lynx Incorporated, Dr. Kimberly Jeffries Leonard, has joined us today and will bring remarks.
Good morning, good morning, good morning. Thank you so much, Madam President. I am so honored to join you today and join all who are gathered virtually on this very rainy Saturday morning here in the District of Columbia for the Columbia, Maryland chapter's Resilience, Weathering Life Storms, a Black Women's Survival Kit webinar. Thank you for bringing this to us at a time when we need it most. I do not come alone. I bring you greetings, love, and support on behalf of our more than 16,000 members in 292 chapters, 41 states, the District of Columbia, the Commonwealth of the Bahamas, and the United Kingdom. I must begin by recognizing the dynamic leader of the Columbia, Maryland chapter, Dr. Judy Grant, for it is under her leadership that the Columbia, Maryland chapter, which is nearly 50 years old, continues to enhance support and affect change in the Howard County community. I want to thank the chapter's Health and Human Services Committee, whose work we are seeing today. Ladies, I commend you for your commitment to illuminating a critical issue that affects our community, mental health, because without it, we have nothing. Let me just take a moment and recognize this dynamic committee. Laura Crandon, Regina Little-Hollis, Yvette Rooks, Elizabeth Clark Adams, Siobhan Arline Bradley, Rosalind Brock, Lindy F. Greenwood Burson, Lisa Harbor Carter, Alice Gail Pollard Clark, Regina Clay, who does double duty as the chapter parliamentarian and is also a member of the Eastern Area Wellness Committee, Jewel Debnam, Rebecca Reed, Rhonda Ricks, Shadra Robinson, Tanya Sellers Hannibal, and Shanna Travis. I also want to take a moment and thank the committee member, the webinar panel, which I know is going to be very dynamic and includes our own Dr. Nicolette Martin, who is our National Health and Human Services Director. I want to take another moment, who I know that I've also already mentioned her name, but our Eastern Area Health and Human Services Chair, Siobhan Arline Bradley, is a critical member of this chapter, and I thank her for all she does. And then I want to offer special recognition to our Eastern Area Vice Director, Dr. Lisa Lowry Lomas, also a member of this chapter, and the first Eastern Area Mental Health Chair. Is it no wonder that the Columbia, Maryland chapter is tackling these hard issues? Creating a safe space for our sisters and bringing together 6 Black women who are experts in this field to have such an intimate discussion on not only mental health challenges, but how to bounce back from those triggered by the compound trauma that we all are facing will be truly impactful and may even save lives. We know that everyone experiences periods of sadness, worry, and anxiety. As issues arise, though, when these feelings won't go away, we need to know what to do. This pandemic could not only be causing mental health issues, but compounding those issues that are already in existence. And as we know, there is a societal stigma surrounding mental illness that may make us not want to seek help. More than that, we know that as African ancestral women, we often take on this superwoman role, muscling our way through our own bouts of depression and anxiety while taking care of everyone else first. I am so very glad that our Columbia, Maryland chapter is addressing this today. The Lynx Incorporated is committed to educating communities about depression, anxiety, social issues, which can be detrimental to our physical and mental health through our National Mental Health Initiative. So I want to thank the Columbia, Maryland chapter again for providing us this toolkit for resilience as we examine and incorporate the big R's to ensure that not only our mental health is well, but our overall health as well. This is how we ensure that we are continuing transforming communities, fulfilling our purpose. Thank you again for having me this morning.
Thank you so much for your encouraging words, Dr. Leonard. And now I will turn the program over to our moderator, Siobhan Arline Bradley.
Thank you so much, President Judy. It is an honor to serve as your moderator today. Well, good morning, good morning. We see we have guests from all over the country, from as far west as California to as far north as Rhode Island to Michigan. It is so great to see you all today. As we prepare for this wonderful program, we do want to give you a snapshot of what you're going to see today. First, you'll really hear from some key leaders in mental health. Now, you'll see there's some special R's for our resilience program: Rebel, Redefine, Reconnect, Revive, and Renew. So you'll hear from each panelist today, and each panel will give us a little bit of a discussion. And in that, they'll talk a little bit about how you rebel, how you redefine, reconnect, revive, and renew. And they'll each speak for about 5 to 7 minutes. But there's going to be some interactive questions, so I want all of our listeners to make sure you are logged on and ready. Remember, all of your questions should go in the Q&A function, and any engagement and answers to questions should go into the chat function. Now, let's get started as we prepare ourselves for the first R in our resilience program. It is a distinct honor today to welcome Dr. Lisa Cooper Lucas. Dr. Lisa holds certifications as a trauma-informed therapist and certified employee assistance professional, master addiction counselor, and a DOT qualified substance abuse professional. In addition to those certifications, she's also a trauma-informed mental health first aid responder to local and national disasters. Recognized as a highly skilled and trained trauma clinician, Dr. Lisa was recruited following those attacks of 9/11 by the Defense Intelligence Agency to provide care to the employees and their families that were impacted by the catastrophe that day. So, participants and guests today, let's get ready to rebel with Dr. Lisa Cooper Lucas. Dr. Lisa?
Thank you so much, Siobhan, and welcome everyone. I want to really establish the understanding when I say rebel, what I truly mean. So we're all working from the same definition. Yes, we're talking about opposition. Often it's armed resistance against an established government, but that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about the last part of this definition, the ruler. We are our own rulers. And based on that, we work with what we have. We rule with what we have. So when we look at our lives and how we've managed the gift of fear, how do we successfully implement that? There's something that's been diagnosed on the next slide as intergenerational trauma. So, what is intergenerational trauma? It's an accumulation of emotional and psychological wounding over the lifespan and across generations. And it's emanating from massive group trauma. As African American women, as women of African descent, we understand that. And it is now, if you're interested in any more information about it, in the Science magazine of July 2019, well, there was an extensive experiment that really gives us a foundation and understanding of how it affects us, our beliefs, our behavior, and our bodies. Next slide, please. So when we look at that, we also consider what it does to us, because the way we think becomes the way we feel, and ultimately the way we behave. So as we deal with those adversities, we also rise. So here's an example of Dr. Kizamika Corbett, who is a part of the National Institutes of Health and key to the development of the COVID vaccine. Next slide. When we think about her involvement in that, we also recognize that there are a number of other Black women who have risen above and beyond when they tried to bury us. When we look at Patrisse Cullors, Alicia Garza, and Opal Tomeli, and Black Lives Matter founders, Stacey Abrams, and how she turned a red state blue. Next slide. And when we look at how that has all impacted us from a historical perspective, in 1964, the Civil Rights Act was passed. And I'm sure all of us know people who are 57 years old. So that really wasn't that long ago. And then on top of that, when we think about it, wasn't really enacted or implemented until later in the years, in the decades. In 1986, there was an extremely brave young woman. Her name was Michelle Vinson. She was hired as a teller in a bank, and for 4 years, she endured physical, sexual harassment and abuse and rape. Her case went to the Supreme Court, and today we have the 1986 ruling of the Supreme Court because of Michelle Vinson. Next slide. As we move through our history and we recognize our foundations, one of the more significant ones is how we've all most definitely benefited from the outcomes of our churches, the Black church, and the foundation of that, which didn't allow us for quite some time to preach from the pulpit. So in 1836, Joanna Lee decided to change all of that. She too has written a book about how she survived that and the sexual discrimination of that time. Next slide. So moving on, when we think about how we've also saved ourselves from the democracy that professes to be open to all. When the Daughters of the Confederacy decided that they wanted to erect a statue for the Black women of the time and entitled it the Mammy statue. Next slide. However, we were not going to stand for that. And the National Association of Colored Women decided this is not something that we want in infamy. The president at the time, Hallie Quinn Brown, said, no, this is not going to happen. She rallied her forces and she encouraged lawmakers to get their husbands to pass civil rights legislation that would guarantee that Black Americans would have housing and access to education and healthcare. Next slide. We have risen above adversity. We have learned that the way we think becomes the way we feel, becomes the way we behave. We recognize that as we implement these changes in our lives, we don't always come from the top. We don't always have the ability to do those things that give us the foundation initially. As Michelle Vinson proved, coming from a home of physical and sexual abuse, marriages of sexual abuse to rise to legislation and a court case that supports all of us and gives all of us the right to be heard from a sexual harassment perspective. Tarana Braley, who said hashtag me too, 11 years before it was actually made a real significant part of the revival of women. We have stood for who we are for many reasons. And when we stand, the rest of the nation rises. We are the foundation of change in this country and around the world. And when we look at how we think and how we treasure our bodies or not, one of the things I'd like to leave with you from one of my favorite poets, her name is Sonia Renee Taylor. Our body is not an apology. We are who we are, and we have come to this place with all we need to be who we are. Taking that into account, we know that we can do whatever we set ourselves up to do. When it hurts, when we overcome the adversities, when the trauma that we have lived with throughout history and present day seems to be an obstacle, we seem to find our way. We seem to rise above. We seem to do what needs to be done always. We know how to rebel. We are African American women who know how to rebel.
Dr. Lisa Cooper-Lucas, we are in awe of your words. What an amazing conversation that you've started us with today. And there is a powerful question that's going to be asked. Dr. Cooper-Lucas gave us context for trauma shaping our beliefs. But here's the question, and please, for all those that are online, we want you to answer in the chat. What other behaviors can you identify in yourself that appear to be a result of intergenerational trauma? It's a loaded question, so we want to give you a chance to jump in the chat. I'll ask it again. What other behaviors can you identify in yourself that appear to be a result of intergenerational trauma? We have over 120 participants to our panelists. So here's some answers coming in, Dr. Lisa. Not feeling good enough, uneasiness, anxiety, insecurities, not thinking I'm good enough and second guessing. This is a big one, the desire to please, playing small, being a people pleaser. Any thoughts on that, Dr. Lisa, as people are sending in their answers?
Absolutely. These are the kinds of thoughts that have sabotaged us over time. And what I really want to point out is those women that I discussed briefly in the presentation have experienced these exact same feelings, these exact same emotions. And in spite of that, we have made laws, legislation, policy, procedure, dissension across time. And we still have the ability to do that. And my co-presenters will also give you some techniques on how to manage that. But it's also important to recognize where we've come from and where we are. And the intergenerational trauma is truly real. And I encourage you to really understand what that means for you as an individual.
Dr. Lisa, you have given us so much to think about. And I do want to acknowledge some of the other chat answers. I actually had to agree with someone. Someone said we need to work hard and Black women fight through pain. That is such an intergenerational traumatic experience that many of us actually mirror to this day. And I see also a positive approach because it's recognized, but financial stability and independence is also something that we learn intergenerationally as well. So sometimes it's positive and may have negative effects. So this is amazing. So Dr. Lisa has set the tone for us today to our participants. Thank you so much to our trusted leader, who also was a proud member of the Columbia, Maryland Lynx chapter. Now, it is my honor to move into our next presenter, someone who is a leader and someone who is an expert, Dr. Lisa Lowry Lomas, looking amazing in her screen. We see her now. She has worked in the field of psychology for over 30 years and is an expert in human relations and development. She served the judicial branch of government, as well as academia and in the private sector. Dr. Lowry Lomas has specialized certifications in the areas of anxiety, depression, grief, telehealth medicine, clinical trauma, As a 20-year solo practitioner, her practice is global. Her mission is to assist individuals in attaining inner peace and true happiness by identifying barriers and limitations, recognizing strengths and skills, and implementing personal power to reach personal and professional goals. It is my honor to present to those that are on the line that are members of the Lynx Incorporated. If you are in the Eastern area, you know this is our Eastern Area Vice Director. And Dr. Lisa Larry-Lomas is going to help us redefine. Dr. Lisa, this is our second Dr. Lisa. Good to see you.
Thank you so very much. Good to see you as well. And good morning to all, to the panelists and to all who are present. We are here today talking about resilience. No one can debate the fact that Black women have been traumatized and that we are resilient. We have historically and continue to experience more trauma than any one group should have to endure. But we have endured, and we remain standing. We are resilient. We have the ability to recover from or adjust to challenging times. Some have said it is because we are strong. I really dislike when we're called strong. It removes the humanness of the experience that we are having. Every time I have experienced a trauma or even simply a hard moment in my life, I have been told by someone who loves and is attempting to support me to be strong. What does it mean to be strong? Does it mean I don't show pain, don't grieve, ignore the stress? Well, quite frankly, yes. That is what they mean when they say, be strong. When I've been told to be strong, it is usually in response to a stressful event, something that makes me sad or is painful. Telling me to be strong in these situations is simply another way of saying, don't stop, don't feel, don't talk about it. But is that strength? Stuffing your feelings and not acknowledging and experiencing the feelings of stress and other emotional and physical impacts of what is occurring is not being strong. The difficult events, trauma, are behaviors that directly contribute to mental and emotional unwellness. It is a major reason why we have the highest mortality rate amongst groups of women in almost every category, and why we struggle with depression, anxiety, post-traumatic stress disorder, and eating disorders more than any other group of women in this country. If this is being strong, we are in trouble. Something has to change. And that change must begin with us. We must redefine for ourselves and for others what it means to be a strong Black woman. By redefining, we will give ourselves the opportunity to begin to heal. I think this is a definition we must all determine for ourselves. No one can project onto us what it means to be strong. We are individuals with different paths and different experiences, unique in our circumstances, and our definitions should reflect that. However, I do believe that all definitions must include 3 elements. As you are redefining what it means to be a strong Black woman, be sure to include these 3 words: selfish, no, and boundaries. I know, these words are counter to what you have been taught and how you are probably currently living in your life. You may even right now, at the mere thought of it, physically feel uncomfortable to think of being selfish. But hear me out, bear with me. Selfish has a bad rap. It just happens, a bad reputation. To be selfish is simply to put yourself first. A research study conducted by the Department of Health and Human Services in 2010 showed that the majority of Black women put the needs of others before themselves. They were last. Putting ourselves last doesn't allow for our needs to be met, nor does it allow for self-care, and can directly lead to anxiety and depression. Our definition must also include no. We often don't believe we can say no. In some instances, we are people pleasers. Some people mention that as a result of the trauma. In other instances, we're afraid. And then sometimes we simply feel obligated. Saying no allows us to live our priorities. And again, practice self-care. We don't realize that when we say yes to something, we are automatically saying no to something else. You cannot be in two places at once. And so when you agree to be in one place, spending your time in a particular way, you are automatically removing other options. Boundaries. Boundaries must also be in your definition. Setting boundaries for others is teaching them how to treat you. A healthy boundary is good in every relationship in your life. It creates the space for you to start to heal from your trauma. You must also set boundaries for yourself so that you can stop and be present and allow yourself to feel. Trauma comes in big and small packages. We are certain to continue to experience versions of trauma as life unfolds, and I am sure those who love you will tell you to be strong. I will expect you to show yourself human. I will expect you to have humanness and hope that you are strong, redefined as selfish, saying no, and setting boundaries. Thank you.
Dr. Lisa, what amazing. The chat is going crazy. We've got the historical context for Rebel, and now we're talking about redefining. And so I believe we do have a question that is going to come up for our panelists today. The question for our listeners: have you ever faced a difficult time in your life and someone told you to be or stay strong? Now, Dr. Lisa, stay on with us because we want to see the reactions in the chat. Oh, I saw someone gave us a long yes. Someone has said that to them. We're getting a lot of responses. There's after my husband passed away, someone just shared that in the chat. Thank you so much for sharing that. Someone said a brother said that to me on Thursday. Oh my goodness. Awesome, so much. This is great. We're getting such major responses. I thank you to Vivian for sharing when her parents passed away. After my daughter's father passed away. The recent death of a sister friend and mentor who changed my life. Dr. Lisa, let's talk about this. Do you want to get some insight as what you're hearing in the chat? Going through a divorce, you're hearing a lot.
Yeah. I mean, people think that it's supportive. They think that it's encouraging, but really what the subtext is, I can't handle it. I'm not sure what to say. And you know, that's okay. But as long as you're not internalizing someone's attempt to kind of say, okay, be strong. The reality is the fact that you survived the trauma is strength in and of itself. You are strong because you're living here today. Being strong does not mean that you don't feel the pain. Feel it. That is the strength. That is the strength. And get support and help when necessary.
Dr. Lisa, I do want to acknowledge there was someone who put in the chat after her daughter passed away that someone told her to be strong. So again, these are major life-changing experiences. But I want you to reiterate what she just said, my friends. She said, when you survived it, that is the strength. And that is the blessing for today. Dr. Lisa and Dr. Lisa, I mean, it's too much. The Lisa effect is taking us to the next level. Thank you. And you look amazing as well. So we are now, I'm telling you, the resilience is just too much. We're going to move on to our next presenter now. Our next presenter is someone who needs no introduction because she is a major force in medicine. Dr. Linda Way Greenwood. She is a board-certified family medicine physician. She's the CEO and chief innovator of Total Renaissance Wellness, which is a health and wellness consulting firm. She is certified in mind-body medicine and is on faculty for the Center for Mind-Body Medicine, where she uses her clinical expertise and insight outside of the exam room to focus on personal and corporate wellness as well as advocacy. We have heard from Dr. Lisa and Dr. Lisa. Now we're going to Dr. Linda Way, and she is a proud member of the Columbia chapter of the Lynx Incorporated. Dr. Linda Way, take us away. We are about to reconnect.
Thank you so much, Siobhan. Wow, so powerful. I'm learning so much from my esteemed colleagues who have already spoken, so thank you. Let me just get my slides here. REconnect. So I'm going to talk to you all for the next few minutes about REconnect. And what does it mean to reconnect? There are several different definitions. To reestablish a bond of communication or emotion, to connect back together, and my personal favorite, the act of or result of restoring a connection. And I particularly like that definition because I like this concept of restoration. And as we go forth into spring is coming up, and as we're looking to reintegrate back into some sort of normalcy, we are really looking to restore and renew ourselves, which Dr. Dabnam is going to talk about a little bit later. Next slide. So if we're reconnecting, that really suggests that we were somehow separated in the first place. Next slide. What is it that disconnects us? Well, I put this into 4 main categories. There's so many things that can disconnect us, but I think the biggest one being COVID-19. COVID-19, this pandemic, this virus has literally and figuratively separated us. We're not able to commune. We're not able to fellowship. We're not able to be together. And so we have a physical separation between us and our loved ones. And then we have racism, which racism, as we all know, has been around for many, many years. But I think it has really come to the forefront in the last 4 years. And definitely there's been a spotlight on it in the last year. Racism divides us. It separates us ideologically, our goals, our values. And I think, as this sign so aptly says, racism itself is a pandemic. And so we have this parallel process going on of racism that's dividing us, keeping us apart. And there's that saying that when majority culture gets a cold, Black and brown culture gets pneumonia, and that is literally happening to us with COVID-19. And then we have grief, and there's grief over so many things. There's grief over literal lives lost to COVID-19. There's the grief of not being able to connect with those that we love. There's the grief of really what I call the best laid plans. I mean, I think of all the children who couldn't walk across the stage for their graduation. There were all the baby showers that couldn't be attended. There were people who had surgeries and couldn't have their loved ones there with them. My daughter, who is a 3rd year in college, I tell people she attends Hampton University in her bedroom. I mean, this is a loss. This is a loss of who we were and who we thought we were. And there's really a loss of what I call a loss of innocence. You know, even as we reintegrate and we establish our new normals, there's a piece of me that knows there's some things we'll never go back to. It reminds me of 9/11, when, you know, before then, I remember when we could drive past the White House, or you could walk a friend or loved one up to the airline, to the gate at the airport, and we can't do those things again. Lastly, we have uncertainty of what's to come. What's our next chapter? Will we be able to pay our bills? Are we going to be able to keep our jobs? What does our job look like now? And so all of these things, as was spoken about a little bit earlier, can be isolating, and we can often feel like we're alone, but we are not alone. Next slide. What I really want to impress upon you is that trauma is universal. As Dr. Lisa Laurie Lomas said, trauma comes to all of us. And I think sometimes there's this misconception that trauma has to be, you know, you were in a car accident or you're in an abusive relationship. There are micro traumas that we deal with every day, especially as women of color. Trauma comes to all of us, but the good news is that it's how you deal with it that determines and defines your resilience. It's rising each time you fall. We all fall. It's how we rise. Next slide. So how do we get to the other side of things? Well, we must reconnect. And I think we really need to reconnect in 4 different categories. We need to reconnect back to our communities and our families. We need to reconnect spiritually. We need to reconnect to ourselves, which we just talked a little bit about, and we need to reconnect on our career and our goals, our passions. Next slide, please. So today is a great day to make a new habit. This is one of my favorite sayings and thought processes. You know, when I think about resolutions, I think of them as something that you break. Well, when you think of it from this point of view, every day is a new opportunity. Every day we can renew. From a community and a family standpoint, I think one of the best ways to be able to reconnect is to channel your energy or your gifts and talents toward helping someone else who might have more needs than you. It doesn't mean negating what's going on with you, but sometimes just making that shift to channel and help the others that are in need in your community. There are so many opportunities during this time. Making sure you reach out to your family and your loved ones, planning those chat dates. My girlfriends and I, many of us, we do virtual happy hours. It's so important. You can do car coffee. There's a lot of different ways that you can connect, even if it's just a text or a touch point. From a spiritual standpoint, and I want to be clear, I'm not talking about religion. Religion is how we organize our spirituality. I'm talking about that which enlivens us, that which gives us life, connecting to something bigger than yourself. And that can be through God, that can be through nature, that can be through meditation, whatever feels right for you. But having that which you connect to that is bigger than yourself. And I like to tell people it's important to have what I call a gratitude attitude. It's so important to just give thanks for what you have. And there's so many different apps, many different ways that we are able to express that gratitude. Then there's self-care. We talked a little bit about that. As Siobhan said, I am certified in mind-body medicine. I teach mind-body medicine and self-care skills to people from all over the world. And I will tell you, everyone is trying to figure out how to do this. And even if it's taking 5 minutes a day to breathe, self-care is not selfish. It's like they say on the airplane, you really have to put on you have to put your mask on first. Because if you don't take care of this, then everything we've talked about means nothing. So take time to experiment and find a new wellness modality. And lastly, really taking that time to just take inventory of your gifts. What are your passions? You know, for many of us, it might seem like this is a difficult time. We don't know if we're going to have our employment, or we're going to have a place that we're able to work. Well, maybe this is a time that you brush off some of those old skills that you have and channel them into something new. Find a new solution to an old problem. Or if you're still at your job, join a new committee, have lunch with someone you never thought about having lunch with. Maybe you can come up with some different ways to revive and renew or rebel all of the things that we've talked about. Don't be afraid to shake things up. Next slide. So in closing, I just wanted to put this little picture here. This is a reminder of, you know, how things used to be, some wonderful ladies in my life. And I just really put it here to remind us that we get energy and we feed off of one another, and we are stronger together. And it's so important to take that time to reconnect. Next slide. And I will leave you with this quote. Perhaps the secret of living well is not in having all the answers, but in pursuing unanswerable questions in good company. Thank you so much.
Dr. Linda Way, thank you. And those pictures just made me miss everyone, because this is the time that we have often taken for granted, and almost being 1 year in this pandemic, it has been amazing. So we love this quote. If we can go to the next slide, we want to make sure that we get our question in. So this question is from Dr. Linda Way's panel. So all in the chat, let's get ready. How do you suggest reconnection in alternative ways other than just a regular Zoom call? Hello, somebody. How many of us are Zoomed out? Yes, yes, yes. But today we are in resilience mode, and so we are Zoom friendly this morning. But what are some of the other ways that you suggest connecting other than the good old fashioned Zoom call? All right. All right, so Dr. Linda, we got some answers in the chat. We see the old fashioned write letters, sending cards or handwritten notes to your family and to your friends. Oh, hello, send some flowers. We love roses, by the way. We are members of the Lynx Incorporated on this line, and we like white ones too, yes. Making goodies and dropping off on porches. Did someone say the basic? Hello, pick up the phone, meet in the parking lot and chat over a coffee, a little snack. So Dr. Linda, you see some of these, I see a card talk, some of these ideas. What are your thoughts, Dr. Linda?
Absolutely. And, you know, I think it's just really important to spotlight the fact that we can go old school. There's nothing wrong with old school. You know, there's nothing wrong with it, and we can mix it up. So even if you are on a screen, there are apps out here that you can get on. You can watch a movie together. You can have, like I said, the happy hours. You can do the car coffee. I know me and some of my line sisters, we will pick a yoga or a meditation to drop into. So even though you're on the screen, you're removed from the screen. I have had all kinds of visits with friends where I'm up on my porch and they're down in their driveway with their, I know it's a little cold right now for those of us that are not on the West Coast, but there's just so many different ways you can touch. Maybe it's a text, send a scripture, call somebody. There's just so many ways that we can reach out to one another, and it can be out of the box. It does not have to be, you know, just the standing thing that we normally do. We have, I think you talk about resilience, I think as a society, we have shown that there are so many different ways. Take a virtual field trip together. There's all kinds of websites that are on here, but just connect, do a morning prayer. Do a morning prayer group together. Take 15 minutes. I saw a lot in the chat about people are caretakers or it's difficult to do self-care time. You always have time for self-care. You always have time for self-care. It's old thinking that you don't have time, because you cannot be your best for the person that you love and you're caring for if you're not your best. Okay, so when you're spending money on everybody else, on your kids, your friends, all that, take 5% of that to spend on yourself, to renew, to rejuvenate, to revive yourself.
So Dr. Leonard, I'm about to take that and write that down. Tithe yourself. Is that what
That's
you just
right,
said? You have to
tithe
yourself.
Tithe yourself. And
Yes.
last thing I'll say, you know, if you do read the good book, it says that your body is a temple and to take care of yourself. Because I saw a couple people said, well, it feels unchristian. I can't think of anything more Christian. All right, I'll get off my sermon.
Clarify us, Reverend. Clarify us, Reverend, today. It is the tea is hot, okay? And we are resilient under this umbrella. You have given us a few things. I do want to honor, there's some couple things that came in the chat that was some great examples. One family actually does Zoom topic calls, fixing your credit, finances. I saw the outdoor cookouts, cooking dinner together in different houses. We talked about some of the cookathons, parking lot over tea. I mean, this connecting from technology and this idea of making a cheer basket. I mean, these are great opportunities. And yes, we're gonna write that down. Tithe yourself. Dr. Linda Way Greenwood said it. Tithe yourself. Hello, somebody. Thank you, Dr. Linda Way. I'm telling you, ladies and gentlemen, we have over 130 participants on this line from across the country. You are getting the nuggets from some of the best leaders and the best minds in the country. To Dr. Linda Way, thank you so much. And our chapter is so proud to have you also as a member. We're going to move on, okay? But before we do, quick housekeeping rule, we've got the Q&A function. Don't forget your question. We've got to see those questions come in. There's a Q&A function that we want you to use. Please go ahead and start typing those questions in so we can start fielding them. The chat is going crazy. You all are giving us such great content. Now let's move on. It is another honor and pleasure to present our next speaker. Her name is Paulette D Scott. Now, Paulette is a national certified counselor, and she is a licensed clinical professional counselor in Maryland. This ordained minister, all the preachers are on the line today, serves as the executive director of the Renaissance Center, a counseling center in Gwynn Oak, Maryland. Paulette Scott, take it away as we prepare to revive.
All right, thank you, Siobhan. Good morning, everyone. It is a pleasure to speak to you this morning, and we have heard some absolutely wonderful and inspiring information today. So I would like to just take the time and take the opportunity to highlight 5 key points as it pertains to our topic. And we have heard, and I just want to reiterate because it's very important, that trauma can happen to anyone at any time and at any age. Mental health conditions should be taken seriously. And African-American women appear to handle stress differently from men or Caucasian women. The biggest obstacle after facing a very stressful time or traumatic event is really a lack of good information. Resilience and how we revive ourselves is significant to our mental and physical health. Next. So trauma, according to research, is a deeply distressing or disturbing experience. It's an emotional shock followed by a stressful event or a physical injury. And as you heard earlier, it may not be one big injury. It may be several micro injuries, so to speak. But it's important to know the symptoms of trauma. Just like we know the symptoms of a heart attack, we're hearing it all the time. Our doctors tell us about it. We're hearing advertisement about knowing the symptoms of a heart attack. I think we need to know the symptoms, the signs and symptoms of trauma. Next. Now, we also are hearing lately about confounded trauma, which is really trauma that someone doesn't have to actually experience firsthand, but it's been transmitted to us via our ancestors. And it can cause post-traumatic stress disorder-like reactions. And those reactions come about because we're faced with prejudices on a daily basis as African Americans. And African-American women are particularly vulnerable to the impact of race-related stress, as we've heard so much about today. And that's because of our social identities as African-Americans and as women. Black women tend to handle stress differently, as I said, than men or Caucasian women. So men, as researchers have said, likely do battle when they are faced with stressful situations. They will do battle or they'll leave that situation. They will remove themselves. Caucasian women find relief from stress by devoting their time to their children, and they get support from their friendships with others. And this is a statement from Shelley Taylor, who is a researcher, and she puts it in this word, that Caucasian women tend and befriend. Then we find that here we are, African-American women, and how do we handle these stress and what kind of responses do we have? And we're a little unique and intriguing in how we handle stress. And I'm going to quote something from Angela Barnett, and she says that we tend, we befriend, we mend, and we keep it in. And I think some of us can relate to that we tend to keep in quite a bit of information. And let's see, I don't know if something's happened here, but quite a bit of information as Black women, and it may or may not be in our best interest to do that. Okay. Trauma affects us in lots of different ways, physically, cognitively, emotionally, spiritually, and socially. So we are affected, and there are some pervasive stressors that we need to be aware of as well. And some of those kinds of things are, we are being faced with mass shortages. Some of us have healthcare access limitations. There's rising suicidal rates, climate change, opioid epidemics, racial injustices, and discrimination. So there are some obstacles in the aftermath of experiencing a traumatic event, and that is, as I said, the lack of good information. So survivors need to really have this information, and I don't know, I hope nothing's wrong with my screen here, but survivors really need to have very good information, as they know that they need to be able to recognize the signs and symptoms and how they can get help. A traumatic event affects everyone in the family in some way or another. Reaction to emotional trauma is complex and it's difficult to predict. We have to be aware and consider factors such as age, whether there's been a past exposure to trauma, family, and supports, whether they are there or not. So what are some of the signs and symptoms of trauma? And some of them, as you see on your screen, is anxiety, depression, physical health issues. And I'm not going to read all of these to you, but I just want you to see them, because sometimes people may just be complaining about, they're having nightmares, they have a memory loss, they're having weight loss or weight gain. And sometimes it gets to the point that it may be that folks are having aggressive thoughts, suicidal thoughts. You never know what's going on with someone, but you want to be able to pay attention to the signs and symptoms of stress and trauma. Even Michelle Obama talked about, and she actually admitted last year, that she was experiencing what she called low-grade depression because of the year that we had with COVID, the losses, the deaths, the political climate that we were going through. So, I was glad to hear her come out and say something, because I think that it made people realize that it's okay to talk about it, that if we have trauma, if we have some unusual, stressful events, that maybe we need to talk about it and not hold it in. Next slide, please. Resilience. The good news is that resilience is a skill that we can learn. What is resilience? It allows us to do a lot of things. It allows us to bounce back, to recover, and to achieve positive outcomes, no matter the obstacles that we have to face. It enables us to develop mechanisms and protection against experiences which could be overwhelming, and it helps us maintain balance in our lives. It protects us from some of the development of some of the mental health difficulties, helps us cope with the stress in a positive way. Next slide. Revive. This is what I'm talking about today. This is the same as resilience. It's being able to restore to life, restore interest, bring back, regain strength, improve our conditions, flourish, and be reinvigorated. Some researchers believe that there's hardwired to bouncing back, but I'm one who believes that we can learn resilience and we can learn as we age. So bouncing back is accepting the reality of what's happening, seeing ourselves as the active agent, not the victim, with choices and taking responsibility. So what are some coping techniques? As you've heard from Dr. Linda Way, and I won't go through all of these, but just please take a look. It's about positive reframing, recognizing our strengths, seeing the glass half full, see yourself as in control, connect with others, ask for help, volunteer, develop good problem-solving skills, recognize and reward small steps, take care of your mind and body, and accept change, accept circumstances that cannot change, recognize the importance of love and intimacy and family, and seek professional help when we feel that we need to. Next slide. So, in honoring our African American month and in talking about demonstrating resilience, I was thinking about Rosa Parks. And I'm just wondering for you, if you would like to just ponder today as you're thinking about the topics that we've discussed, how did Rosa Parks demonstrate resilience as an African American woman? And what cultural influences helped her revive herself after experiencing such traumatic events? And I think that if we can just take time and think about some of these things, her example shows us what resilience means when faced with adversity. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Paulette Scott. Now, let me just say this. She said something that we pretend and we keep within. Well, I'm not going to pretend that I read the right bio because I read the wrong one.
Right.
I made Paulette a preacher, and I made her executive director of an organization that she is not. But because I've learned today not to pretend and keep it within, I want to read the correct bio that I copied incorrectly. The correct bio for Paulette Scott is she's an experienced, licensed, independent clinical social worker, somebody, there it is, who has worked in various healthcare settings as a social worker, therapist, manager, and as an executive director. She has enjoyed working with people of all ages, ranging from the youth to the elderly. So we're talking to a licensed, independent clinical social worker who gave us some serious nuggets. So thank you for not allowing me to pretend within, because we need to say your name, Paulette Scott. Thank you so much for being so awesome about that. And I apologize, and I'll introduce Dr. Carla after this. You put a slide up there of a resilient leader who was Rosa Parks. And so let's open the chat because you gave us some nuggets, okay? So how did Rosa Parks demonstrate resilience as a Black woman, and what cultural influences helped her revive herself after experiencing such traumatic events? And think about this, some of you that are on the line may remember what it was like to live in the Jim Crow South, if that's where you're from, or what you've experienced in the past. What do you think she was able to do? How did she demonstrate resilience? If you want to put those answers in the chat, I don't want to stop that because this is some amazing content. I just love some of the list of signs that we need to be looking out for and how we even engage. So I see some chat answers here, Paulette, coming up. Faith, right? She connected with strong family and community support. And I wouldn't be who I was if I wouldn't say this. She had a strong NAACP family. Many of you know that is my background. I work with the NAACP. She had a strong support system there, brave and beyond belief. And she did it. Even though she was afraid, she chose to do this. Paulette, you want to respond to that? Some of the chats that you're hearing?
Yes, thank you. Those are some wonderful remarks. And as we know the story of Rosa Parks, and you're right, she did go through a lot of adversity, that she had to give up a lot personally to pursue some of the goals that she had and working with the different organizations that she did. But she also was able to adjust. She was able to adjust her emotions, her thoughts, her behaviors. She was able to focus on a positive aspects and opportunities. So yes, she went through some adversities, but she also was resilient, and she was able to respond, and she was able to persevere. And I think that's something that, you know, just because we're talking about resilience doesn't mean that you don't fall down. It doesn't mean that you don't have a hard time. It means that you know how to get back up. It kind of tells us, and this is a little story, this is an easy one when we talk about a young person trying to ride a bike, and they get on that bike and they fall down. That's painful and it's hurtful. But guess what that young person does? They get right back on that bike because they're going to ride that bike. And I think that as we go through life, we learn and we grow, and we have opportunities. We do have obstacles, but we also learn how to survive and how to keep pushing. And I think Rosa Parks was able to do that. She pursued everything with energy and drive. And I'm sure that she had some days when she felt, you know, that it was rough, but she did ask for help, and she had an organization behind her. She had connection. She was with other people who encouraged her, and they had a lot of support there. So I just feel that we need to remember to build and maintain good relationships and network.
Love it.
It's nothing any greater than being able to connect and network and manage conflict. We can learn to do that.
Paulette, you have given us some nuggets. And speaking of connections, we've got so many visitors that are on the call. We're getting text messages, we're getting chats. So we have members of Divine Nine sororities that are on this line. We have members of Jack and Jill. We have members of the Lynx Incorporated here. We've got families represented all over the country. So you're talking about connection. This resilience conversation is right. So it's such an honor to be able to have you on, Paulette Scott. Now, we are about to close out. We do have another question. That's right. We do have one more question. I'll ask the question. You can answer this in the chat. What can we do to be more prepared in coping with traumatic experiences when they occur? So please put that in the chat. What can we do to be more prepared in coping with traumatic experiences when they occur? And as you're typing that up, I want you to think about that. Paulette, thank you so much. You have informed us. You've given us so much content, and your Lynx sisters are so proud of you today. Appreciate you so much.
Thank you.
Now let's transition over. As you all are answering that question, those traumatic experiences, being prepared to cope, we have the honor of introducing a wonderful guest who is going to close us out. Now you heard her bio, but I'm going to say it again so we get this right. Dr. Carla Dabnam is a national certified counselor and licensed clinical professional counselor in the state of Maryland. Now, this woman is an ordained minister. So Paulette, you might be a preacher, you didn't know, but we do know Dr. Carla Dabnam is an ordained minister and serves as the executive director of the Renaissance Center, which is a counseling center in Gwynn Oak, Maryland. And Reverend Dr. Carla, close us out with this word and allow us to renew.
Amen. Thanks again for having me as a part of this great panel. It's such a timely topic. So much is going on in our world and society that we need this kind of word to undergird us. My word is renew, and I'm building off of what everyone else has said already. We have learned that to be resilient means we have to rebel. We have to redefine what it means to be a strong Black woman. We must reconnect with others and with ourselves, and we must revive. And so these are things that we are called on to do. And a part of that, and we've heard it, everyone has kind of been on point, on theme, And to renew is about resilience as well. So it's about reclaiming and rebuilding your life. And so sometimes the things that we've done, the way we've coped, our way of being hasn't always done us well. So now it's time to renew, to look at some different things so that, you know, we can be restored and be the person that we want to be, not the person that others want us to be. Next slide. So as we look at the meaning of renew, we can look at this, you know, from the dictionary: to make like new, to restore, to restore. So I feel like in this season, restoration is really what we all need, but restoration doesn't come because we just say, hey, I want to be restored. Restoration is a process, it's a return, it's to bring back to life, it's to recreate, it's to make over. And we hear about, you know, the old makeover shows, or even we see a lot of people doing a lot to physically make themselves over. But the renewal I'm talking about is the renewed mind. To have a renewed mind means a renewed sense of self, purpose, and other things that are going to make you be able to experience life differently. And that's what resilience is about. It's about learning to experience life differently. Next slide. So how do we experience life differently? How do we, take these steps to renewal? We have to explore our options. We've seen so many options already from our other presenters of how we can better ourselves, self-care. We can connect with others. We can redefine who we are. We can rebel and take steps to go outside of the box, outside of the norm. We can revive ourselves. So there's different ways, different options. You can meet new people, check out what's available. There are so many things you can do, again, without leaving the comfort of your home. You can explore your options where you are and then make those connections that are necessary. You can find hope. I know hope is something that you might not have thought about as a part of your resilience package of being renewed, but hope is essential. And you might not find hope where you are per se, but you can find hope in other activities. Volunteer. There are still volunteer opportunities at the food banks, at other various organizations. Find hope. Find a cause to support. So even if you can't volunteer in person, there are many options for you to find hope through supporting others. Revisit your artistic side. I've seen so many people start pottery, they're crocheting, knitting, they're painting portraits, they're reupholstering chairs, they're painting, they're doing all kinds of things. And those are sources of hope. When you tap into your artistic side, you are tapping into that piece of you that can go down into your hope. Adapt a growth mindset. We have a fixed mindset, growth mindset. Fixed mindset is, I've always done it this way. I can't change. This is how it's always been done. This is just the way I am. We need to adapt a growth mindset in order to renew our mind, right? That's what the renewal process means, to make new. So the growth mindset means, hey, I have to be flexible. I have to be open to, again, new ideas. You don't have to do what you've always done. You can do something different. You can reinvent yourself. You can be your best self now. You don't have to wait to be your best self. You can start being your best self now. You can also practice self-compassion. Self-compassion is something we said, love yourself. Self-compassion means you take time for yourself. That 5 minutes, you deserve 5 minutes. You deserve 5 minutes. Practice self-compassion. Be tender-hearted towards yourself and have that empathy. Next slide, please. Find Your Why. It's a book by Simon Sinek called Find Your Why. So if you want to get deeper into that, you can get the book. But knowing your why, your purpose, helps to shape the expression of it. And so sometimes the renewal has to take place when we go back into what's important to us and finding our why and purpose. And that renews us and gives us the energy we need in this season. You have to find your strength from within, your strength from your faith, your strength from your hope in serving your community. But finding your why helps you to focus that your purpose, focus your activities and your actions. You start with why too, because it's a motivator. And when you've been down, when we've gone through trauma after trauma, generational, intergenerational, cultural trauma, personal trauma, we have to be revived and reinvigorated, and our purpose can motivate us and influence us to take positive steps and actions. And so starting with why, revisiting your passion and purpose is never too late. Remember that this renewal process can start every day. You can start. Remember, we have new mercies every day. So with those new mercies come a new experience for you to pursue your passion and your purpose. Next slide. Growth is intentional. So you don't renew, you don't grow just because, hey, I woke up and you say, I want to grow. You grow because it's intentional. You make actual steps, you make a plan, you pull it out, you follow the plan, you revisit the plan, you schedule the plan, you whatever, it's intentional. So first you bloom where you're planted. Now we all can't relocate, go from the West Coast to the East Coast, move out of the country. So we have to make the best of where we are. And that's why the purpose and the why come into play, because it's not so much where you are or how you do it, it's why you do it. So bloom where you are planted. You can maximize your growth right where you are. You don't have to, stretch out and do things like other people are doing. You can bloom where you are planted. You can find your people. We heard about reconnecting, finding your people, your tribe, whatever you want to call them, your posse, your family, your friends, whoever those people are, find your people. Doesn't have to be a whole group of people. It could just be one or two persons, but finding your people is your support system. Sometimes that's within your family. A lot of times it's outside of your family, but find your people. People have similar interests and goals that can support you in being renewed. You have to have people that are on this journey with you that can support you, and that's your people. Peers have similar interests. Again, your purpose is, I can't stress that enough. Remind yourself of your purpose. When you're feeling down and discouraged, remind yourself of your why, your purpose, what you feel you were put on earth to do, and then begin to do more of that. The more you do of that, the more you would feel renewed within yourself. And that is what will help you to be more resilient. Next slide. So be open to change and new beginnings. Endings lead to beginnings. You can't begin something unless something else ends, right? We just heard we can't say no and yes to the same things in the same time. So if we say no to one thing, that means we're opening ourselves up to another yes. So it's okay to turn down things because the door will open for something else. Be open to change and new beginnings, and it all takes courage. And if you've attended this workshop today, you have the courage to be renewed. Thank you.
Oh man, Dr. Carla, This whole sermon you preached today just tore us up. I'm looking at the chat. I mean, we are getting such response. Did you all see what that just said? Endings lead to beginnings. Please don't miss what you've heard today. And I see the family and the crew, everyone is shouting that out. Do we have a question, a poll question also for Dr. Carla to our tech team? I think we do.
Yep. Yeah, I have one.
All right. Have you explored your purpose? So in the chat, start answering that. In the chat, start answering that. I know we've got about 10 minutes left. We've got some major questions. We've got, I think, a total of about 5 questions. So I'd like for one panelist to answer one question. I see you. Have you explored your purpose? Need to do more work on that. I see you. We're going to be exploring that. I see some of the participants talking about that. Have you explored your purpose? April's going to revisit that. Yes, me too, April. I need to explore after today's resilience. We've got to start journaling about this. Yes, I love it. I love it. So let's go ahead and get all of our panelists on together. Has this not been one of the best panels you've seen? I am biased. Yes, this is my chapter. Yes, we are the greatest ever today for getting this kind of information out. I cannot believe how much really strong content we've been able to share, and your participation with our over 130 participants. You've been amazing. So if Dr. Linda Way can join us, Dr. Lisa, Paulette, we'll get everybody on the line. I'm going to start asking the questions. We did have a question about physical violence, and I do want to make sure that we get that question answered. If you do not mind, I want to just honor that if our panelists are okay with that. And I know someone said they could help us with this question. I just got the note that we have a young woman whose sister has experienced now physical abuse. And so the question did come through. So we have some clinical folks on here that can help us with this. How do we help to lift her, to have the strength to tell her to leave the abuser alone? So if we can go ahead and get that question answered, that would be super helpful in this moment. And I believe, go ahead.
I can help you with that one, Siobhan, and I do reach out to the person who wrote this and her family. It is a
Yes.
difficult situation. And I did put a telephone number in the Q&A for her. But one of the things in these kinds of situations, and this is a co-occurring pandemic in this environment, and by that I mean because some of us are safe at home, not all of us are safe at home. That's the number one issue. Number two is that the resources that are out there are restricted because we're all so sequestered in places that are supposed to be safe. So here are several things that need to happen. One, the way domestic violence becomes more prolific is that the abuser is successful in separating the individual from all contact. So whatever you do, family members stay in contact, however you can make that happen. Also keep in mind that there's so many monitoring devices out there that it may not be safe for your loved one to receive text messages from you necessarily. So you need to figure out a way to monitor how you are in connection with your loved one. If you have to put a burner phone buried in the front yard somewhere with a domestic violence telephone number associated with it, do that. If you need to hide money in her car, do that. If she's being monitored by him on her phone, you may need to get her a separate phone. But there are things that you can do to help her do that. But above all, don't try to convince her to leave. That turns her away. She doesn't want to hear what you say if you try to convince her to leave. Your best option is to hear her, be available for her, and find ways to get her resources that she doesn't have access to now.
Dr. Lisa Cooper-Lucas, thank you for that. And thank you for agreeing to take that question on. And we just want to say publicly that we are in prayer for you in this moment. And the chapter is here and thankful for our expertise. Go ahead, Dr. Lisa, I see you.
I just want to make the telephone number public.
Please.
We're talking to more than one person. It's 1-800-799 and the word SAFE, SAFE. And she should be mindful not to pull up anything that can be tracked by the abuser, because that's something that happens with her phone or her computer or anything she may use to reach out.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. We're going to pose this question. I struggle with feeling angry with taking care of a family member. How do I address the anger? Can someone take that question? One of our other panelists?
Yeah, I'll address that question.
Sure.
Because I talked about being selfish and putting yourself first. You know, the anger in large part is probably coming from an element of resentment, because you are prioritizing your family member, and so your life has changed and you're making a myriad of sacrifices in order to support and care for your loved one. I do think that taking care of yourself and carving out time for yourself is critically important. I mean, that is really the place to start, because you're caring for this person clearly because you love this person. And so I'm sure you want to continue to support and encourage. Also, getting some assistance from other people. Often we feel like we have to take on the entire burden ourselves, and you don't have to. And so whether you're getting assistance from friends, family, it is not an imposition. And even if the loved one doesn't want to have people help, I know that my grandmother, when needed the assistance, she didn't want outsiders helping her, but you have to do what is necessary for you to also be okay in this situation. If you don't take care of yourself, you're not going to be able to care for anybody. So that's critical.
Great. Dr. Linda, I have a question that's posed for you directly. Oh, you wanted to answer that? Oh, sure,
Yeah,
sure.
and then that's fine. And yes, just to piggyback on that, one of the things that we do in the mind-body medicine space is that we have a saying that all emotions are welcome. All emotions are innocent and all emotions are welcome. And just to piggyback on what Dr. Loma said is that it's okay to feel how you feel. It's okay to,
Yes.
I think part of the trauma in re-traumatizing is that we're feeling guilt about how we feel instead of acknowledging it and processing through it. So it's really important. Why, of course you feel resentful. Sometimes you feel angry, you feel guilty, and it's important to acknowledge those things. And that the way to do that is when you start, that's why we talk about meditation and that self-care piece, where you really have to get in touch with that. And then you process through it, and then you figure out what your triggers are, because everyone has triggers with different things that they do. Maybe you journal with it, or you dialogue with it, or you say, oh, okay, I'm feeling that feeling in my shoulders now. What's going on with me? And how can I redirect or do a little bit of a shift to process through that so that I can go back to the things that I need to do?
Well, Dr. Linda, stay right there, because there's a question for you. And I know we're at the top of the hour, but I'm going to take these 3 questions because folks did send them in and we have 3 people to answer them. So Dr. Linda, this question is for you. In the context of the work environment where you may be managing people, there was a line between your working and personal lives in person. But now I work from home. So what suggestions do you have for setting boundaries at work? These people can be crazy. So that's the question for Dr. Linda.
I think, again, you really have to sit down and you have to ask yourself, what is doable for me and what is not doable for me? And you have to ask yourself, is this, you have to make guidelines, almost like an outline for what you're willing to deal with and what you're not willing to deal with. And all of this is going to keep going back to the self-care, because, there are people who work feeds them. They thrive on it. So they're on at 4 in the morning, 2 in the morning, 12 in the morning. And going back to another one of my favorite sayings that one of us said, I think it was Dr. Lomas, you teach people how to treat you. Okay. So if you are answering texts at 2 o'clock in the morning, then you tell them that that's okay.
You're preaching.
So you really have to decide what is reasonable, what is acceptable for you. And then you teach people and you model for them. Because some people don't know any better. I remember working with someone whose son committed suicide and she went to work the very next day. And when I asked her why that was, she said, I had nowhere else to go. So you just don't know what people are bringing to a situation or what their experience is. And it's not for us to judge their experience, but you can only be responsible for you. And you let people know I'm accessible. This is when I'm accessible. This is what I can handle. And there's this misconception that somehow because we're at home, we're a captive audience for the entire 24 hours of the day to do things. And that's just not the case. And so it's a culture change and it's a shift.
What Dr. Wood is really talking about are boundaries, setting boundaries for people. And I know in my practice, working with people who are working from home and everything is blending, it's really important also if you can stick to a particular time, to Dr. Lindway's point, not to have rolling hours all the time, and if possible, to create a separate space. Not all of us are able to do that, but even if you have this one particular corner in the dining room table that's work, and you don't also do anything else there, that also helps to compartmentalize so that it's not all blending together.
Yeah, that's amazing. I as a parent, I have a little person here. And one of the things that I've learned to do is between 6 and 8, not take meetings. And that was a difficult choice because a lot of us do a lot of civic work and we're doing work and it carries over. But I knew that would be the time he needs to eat with someone. So either my husband or I need to be available in that time. So I appreciate the boundaries question. Now, this question came in and snuck in on us on the chat. And Dr. Dabnam, this is for you. The question is, what is the alternate option when it is your tribe that causes the most trauma?
Oh, that is good. That's interesting. Well, again, you get to redefine. We heard that earlier. You get to recreate your circle. You get to determine how engaged you will be with certain groups. And I think we've just become beholden to people and they expect us to be there for them. But if it's no longer healthy for you, we've already heard you can say no. You set boundaries. You just put some of those things around them and they may be offended, but that's, just something we might have to live with. But if we're going to, have that peace, have some good self-care practices, you're going to just have to remove yourself and disengage. And I'm all about disengaging. So
check it out on the tribe.
Look, they don't have to know that you've disconnected. I'm just saying.
I'd like to respond a little bit on that too, because I think it's very important that when we're making changes, doesn't always have to be the total change. And I agree with you, Dr. Dabnam, is that you can make small changes and reward yourself for those small changes. Because, to change a whole lifestyle and to just separate from everybody can be kind of traumatic itself. And I think if we learn to set the boundaries, but also make those small changes and let people understand that, where you're coming from and why. We change. We're constantly making changes. We cannot be everything to everybody at all times. And it's okay to say that, to speak it, let people hear it. And I think if we can learn to do that a little bit more, we can take better care of ourselves.
Now, Paulette, this question that we have, this is our last question that came in. This is actually specifically for you.
Oh, okay.
Question that came in is that there is constant stress of the daily news coming up about African Americans and Black people in this country suffering and being treated so unfairly each and every day. Can you help us? How do we deal with that?
Wow, that's a big one. And I have to admit that I'm a news hound. And I'm telling you, in the first days, I was checking out everything. I was going from channel to channel to channel to channel. And I did great for a while. And then I realized it was starting to bother me. And I would be a little tearful. It was too much. I was traumatizing myself by listening to all of that. And so, we do hear a lot. It's a lot of negativity. It's a lot that shows us not in our best light. It's not always true, the story that we're hearing on the news. And I think we have to learn again to set boundaries. If you want to hear the news, you want to know what's going on a daily basis, give yourself a certain amount of time to listen to the news station that you like and then get off. It's just too much. And a lot of it is just so negative. And I still go back. I'm so proud of Michelle Obama for just admitting and saying, you know, I feel that I'm experiencing a low-grade depression. And I'm telling you, with everything that's been going on, you know, we have been traumatized over and over again. And to hear all the negativity is really hard. So we have to set boundaries. We have to watch how much news we're taking in. It's okay to turn that television off and do something totally different and just find things that can revive ourselves. We take time to get our hair done. Well, I haven't lately. And to get our manicure and our pedicure. And we used to get the massages and all of that. And we can't do all that now, but some of us are starting to, but we can learn other ways to take care of ourselves. And I just ask everyone to just do that. And one of them is turn that television off if the news is too negative.
Wow. I tell you, oh, Dr. Lindaway, I see you.
Yeah, I just, it's just really strongly coming up for me. You know, as a physician, when you're in medical school, all you do is get a barrage of this, what I call the stats. It's all the stats of all the things that Black people are number one at. And it's not the good stuff, right? It's not, you know, it's number one in diabetes, number one in, you know, infant mortality, number one in mental health. And so I learned very early on to listen to what people say and studies with a very critical eye. And so I just felt like it was really important for me to say to you, I've shifted. When I hear something that a lot of Blacks are this or a lot of people of color are that, I look under the numbers. What is that really telling me? Because in this country, and I won't go on this, you'll be double victimized. You'll be told that you are, you know, all these things, and that there's somehow something wrong in our DNA or something wrong with us as to why we are showing the manifestations of the things that are happening to us. When really the bigger question is, why is that happening to us? So, you know, I just put that challenge out there to really look underneath why things are happening and use that as fuel to get underneath and do something about what is being told. So when I hear, oh, more Black and brown people are getting COVID, I think, what can I do to try to energize and educate our community so that that's not happening? Or what opportunity do I have to get out here and educate majority culture about how they're contributing to that?
There's a last part of a question that just came in. So I want to read it and then we'll close out after this. And it says, please discuss trauma's impact on physical health and how individuals' resilience can be supported. So let's throw that out there. Come on, Dr. Lisa Cooper-Lucas.
I want to add the other piece of the information that we have to consider is the intergenerational trauma. And that has validated now through a lot of scientific experiments. And from that perspective, when we talk, as Dr. Lindaway was saying, when we talk about Black people, brown people being at the top of the register for all the negative stuff, think about what we have overcome to get to where we are. We were given the worst food. We were given the leftovers. We were living in shacks. We didn't have clean water. We didn't have health care. Nobody told us how to take care of ourselves. We were used as tools. So when we take all of that in from an intergenerational perspective, you may feel like you don't have that impact today, but you most definitely do, because the body has absorbed all of that. And today it is really documented that coming forward, all of those medical conditions exist from a historical perspective because of what we eat, how we live, and how we were treated. So we don't learn how to treat ourselves better. We lost that because we were not a part of the equation of being well. So that's the foundation, and I'll turn it over to one of the physicians to also add the medical piece of it. I think Dr. Lindaway did a great job of really setting that up for better understanding.
You know, and I'd also like to simply add that to piggyback on what Dr. Cooper-Lucas said is we're not taught good habits. And so intergenerationally,
Right.
we are role modeling for our children now. Our grandparents, our parents, great-grandparents role modeled for us. And so as we're watching them cope with stress, trauma, we're learning, oh, that's how you cope with that, whether it's conscious or unconscious. My mother used to say, do as I say, not as I do. You know, and that's a good concept, but in reality, we're watching what they do and we're learning unconsciously to do as they do. And so it's a deliberate effort to break this intergenerational cycle of not taking care of ourselves and self-destruction and that sort of thing. So,
Absolutely. Well, it has been a resilient Saturday. We have had and kept over 100 participants on today. It is hard to keep people busy on Zoom for 90 minutes, and we have gone and done this time and even had some time for extra questions. What a day, what a morning. Thank you so much for listening. I'm going to turn it over now to our fearless chair of this program, Dr. Yvette Rooks. What a program. Thank you, panelists, for all that you've done. Yvette?
Amazing, outstanding, enlightening. What a blessing. Thank you, Siobhan, for your wonderful moderating duties for our resilience program today. I hope our participants all gain tools to weathering life's storms. The information in the chat, the supporting of each other was absolutely fantastic. Participants, you will all receive an email SurveyMonkey survey to complete. And upon submission of this survey, you will receive a magnificent resource guide for behavioral and mental health services. The resource manual represents a compilation of efforts from the Eastern area of the Lynx Incorporated, the Columbia, Maryland chapter of the Lynx Incorporated, and the Horizon Foundation here in Howard County. I would like to now reintroduce our lovely Columbia chapter president, Dr. Judy Grant.
Thank you. Panelists, your conversations were absolutely awesome. Our moderator came with such a positive spirit. It all works together. Thank you so much. I would like to thank the Horizon Foundation for your support in this event. And a special thank you goes to the national president of the Lynx Incorporated, who took time out from her very busy schedule to be here with us today, Dr. Kimberly Jeffries Leonard. Thank you so much, and thank you for your encouraging words and for your amazing leadership. And now I'd like to thank everyone for joining us today. Hopefully, you have absorbed some tools to put in your pocket to deal with some of these issues that we have to deal with as Black women. Thank you all and have a wonderful weekend.
Take care.
Thank you.